I don't think people understand the true challenges polar bears face. Imagine a world without ice, a world where temperatures soar and once frozen landscapes melt away. This is the reality facing the Arctic, a region warming twice as fast as the rest of our planet. Ice, once a symbol of permanence, now disappears at an alarming rate. This frozen world, home to unique and resilient creatures, faces an uncertain future. Among them is an icon of the Arctic, a creature perfectly adapted to this harsh environment, the polar bear. Their very survival hinges on the ice, their hunting grounds, their home. Polar bears, the apex predators of the Arctic, are facing unprecedented challenges. As the ice retreats, their world shrinks, forcing them to adapt or face extinction. Join us as we journey to the top of the world to witness firsthand the plight of these magnificent creatures. We'll delve into their struggle for survival, exploring the remarkable adaptations they are undergoing to cope with a rapidly changing environment. This is a story of resilience, a testament to the power of nature to adapt, but it's also a stark warning. Stay with us and discover the fate of the polar bear in a melting Arctic. The Arctic, a vast expanse of ice and snow, seemingly untouched and pristine. Yet beneath this icy facade, a dramatic transformation is underway. Temperatures are rising at an alarming rate, twice as fast as anywhere else on Earth. The once permanent ice sheet, a frozen ocean that has defined the Arctic for millennia, is now in retreat. Each summer, more ice melts away, exposing darker ocean water. This darker water absorbs more heat from the sun, further accelerating the melting process. It's a vicious cycle, a feedback loop with potentially catastrophic consequences. The very fabric of this frozen world is changing, and the implications are far-reaching. For the Arctic is not a barren wasteland. It's a vibrant ecosystem, teeming with life uniquely adapted to this extreme environment. From microscopic algae to massive whales, a delicate web of life depends on the presence of ice. And as the ice goes, so too goes the balance of this fragile ecosystem. At the heart of this ecosystem lies a complex food chain, with each link relying on the one before it. At its base are tiny algae, the primary producers of the Arctic Ocean. These microscopic plants thrive in the cold, nutrient-rich waters beneath the ice. These algae are then consumed by small crustaceans like krill, which in turn become food for fish. These fish in turn sustain larger predators like seals and seabirds. And at the pinnacle of this food chain stands the apex predator, the ruler of the ice, the polar bear. This intricate web of life is finely tuned, reliant upon the stability of the Arctic environment. But with climate change disrupting this balance, the consequences ripple through the entire food chain, threatening the very survival of these Arctic inhabitants. Polar bears. These magnificent creatures are perfectly adapted to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Their thick fur and blubber layer provide insulation against the frigid temperatures. Their powerful limbs and sharp claws make them formidable hunters on ice and land. Their keen sense of smell allows them to detect prey, primarily seals, from miles away. And their ability to fast for months on end is a testament to their incredible resilience. For centuries, polar bears have thrived in this challenging environment, their lives intricately linked to the presence of sea ice. The ice serves as their hunting platform, their bridge between land masses, and their breeding ground. It is their lifeline, their home. But as the ice melts away, so too does their hunting ground, their access to food, and ultimately, their future. The Arctic is changing at a breathtaking pace, and for the polar bear, this change is literally a matter of life and death. The very platform upon which their survival depends, the sea ice, is shrinking and thinning at an alarming rate. Each summer, the ice retreats further north, and each winter, it takes longer to freeze again. This shrinking ice forces polar bears to spend more time on land, away from their primary food source, seals. Seals are rich in fat, providing the energy polar bears need to survive the harsh Arctic winters. But with less ice to hunt on, polar bears are finding it increasingly difficult to catch their preferred prey. This is a recipe for disaster. Polar bears are powerful predators, but they are not well suited for hunting on land. Their massive size, while an advantage on ice, becomes a hindrance on land, making it difficult to stalk prey or chase them down. They are creatures of the ice, and their very survival is now threatened by its disappearance. As the ice retreats, polar bears are being forced to adapt their hunting techniques. They can no longer rely solely on their traditional methods of waiting near breathing holes in the ice or ambushing seals on land. Instead, they are exploring new ways to find food, often with mixed success. Some bears are venturing further inland, scavenging for berries, birds' eggs, and even caribou carcasses. While this provides some sustenance, it's a far cry from the high-fat diet they need to thrive. Others are attempting to hunt different prey, such as walruses or even beluga whales, but these hunts are often dangerous and rarely successful. These changes in hunting behavior are a testament to the polar bear's adaptability. But they are also a stark reminder of the challenges these creatures face in a warming world. Their survival now hinges on their ability to learn new skills, exploit new resources, and adapt to a rapidly changing environment. With less time spent on ice, polar bears are spending longer periods on land. This shift in habitat utilization is forcing them to confront new challenges and interact with other species in ways they haven't before. In some regions, polar bears are increasingly coming into contact with humans, leading to potential conflicts. Coastal communities, already grappling with the impacts of climate change, are now facing the added concern of polar bears venturing into their towns and villages in search of food. This proximity can be dangerous for both bears and humans, leading to stressful encounters and, in some cases, the need for relocation or even euthanasia of bears deemed a threat. This human-wildlife conflict is a direct consequence of climate change and the shrinking ice. As polar bears are pushed further inland, they are more likely to cross paths with humans, creating a complex and often heartbreaking situation for all involved. Perhaps the most concerning adaptation polar bears are undergoing is a physiological one. They are starving. With less access to seals, their primary food source, polar bears are experiencing prolonged periods of hunger, leading to significant weight loss and a decline in overall health. This starvation is particularly dangerous for pregnant females, who rely on their fat reserves to nourish themselves and their cubs during the long winter months. Cubs born to malnourished mothers are often smaller, weaker, and less likely to survive their first year. The long-term implications of this nutritional stress are dire. A decline in cub survival rates could have devastating consequences for the future of polar bear populations. This is a stark reminder that climate change is not just an environmental issue, it's a humanitarian one, with far-reaching impacts on both wildlife and humans alike. In the heart of the Canadian Arctic, a majestic male polar bear, whom researchers have named Spirit, reigns over his icy domain. Weighing over 1,000 pounds, Spirit is a testament to the raw power and majesty of his kind. He's a skilled hunter, his movements honed by years of experience navigating the treacherous ice flows. But even Spirit, the embodiment of polar bear strength, is feeling the pressure of a changing Arctic. The ice he relies on for hunting is breaking up earlier each spring, forcing him to come ashore for longer periods. He's forced to scavenge for scraps, a far cry from the seal feasts he's accustomed to. Researchers tracking Spirit have noticed a change in his behavior. He's more desperate in his hunt, taking risks he wouldn't normally take. He's lost weight, his once pristine coat now appearing dull and matted. Spirit's story is a microcosm of what's happening to polar bears across the Arctic. On the shores of Hudson Bay, a mother polar bear, affectionately known as Aurora, faces a heartbreaking dilemma. She's given birth to 2 healthy cubs, but the ice is melting earlier than ever before. The seals, her primary source of nourishment, have moved further north, leaving Aurora with a dwindling food supply. She needs to feed her cubs to give them the strength to survive their first year, but she's too thin, her own energy reserves depleted from giving birth and nursing. Desperation creeps in as she watches her cubs grow weaker. Aurora's story is a poignant reminder of the sacrifices mothers make for their young. It's a story repeated countless times across the Arctic, as female polar bears struggle to raise their cubs in a world where food is becoming increasingly scarce. In the icy wilderness of Svalbard, a young female polar bear, nicknamed Frostpaw by researchers, embarks on an epic journey. Forced ashore by the melting ice, she finds herself on an unfamiliar landscape, miles from her traditional hunting grounds. Driven by hunger, she follows the coastline, searching for food and for other bears. Her journey takes her past human settlements, where the smell of food is tantalizing but dangerous. She encounters other polar bears, some desperate and aggressive, others weary and resigned. Frostpaw's odyssey is a testament to the resilience of her species, their ability to adapt and survive in the face of adversity. But it's also a stark reminder of the challenges they face as their world melts away. These stories of individual bears are not isolated incidents. They are representative of a larger trend, a trend confirmed by scientific data collected over decades. Satellite imagery shows a dramatic decline in Arctic sea ice, particularly during the summer months when polar bears rely on it for hunting. Studies on polar bear populations reveal declining body condition, lower cub survival rates, and increasing instances of human-wildlife conflict. The evidence is clear. Climate change is having a profound impact on polar bears, and the future of these magnificent creatures hangs in the balance. The stories of Spirit, Aurora, and Frostpaw are just a glimpse into the lives of these remarkable creatures. Their struggles are real, their plight urgent. The time to act is now, to reduce our impact on the planet and give polar bears a fighting chance for survival. The Arctic, once considered a pristine and remote wilderness, is now at the forefront of global climate change. The rapid melting of sea ice, the lifeblood of this fragile ecosystem, is sending shockwaves through the entire food web. Polar bears, as apex predators, are feeling the effects of these disruptions acutely. Their plight is a stark reminder that everything in nature is interconnected. The decline of polar bear populations is not just a tragedy for these magnificent creatures, it's a symptom of a much larger problem with global implications. As sea ice disappears, so too does a critical habitat for a myriad of other species, from microscopic algae to seals, walruses, and whales. The loss of ice also has significant consequences for the planet's climate system. Sea ice acts like a giant mirror, reflecting sunlight back into space and helping to regulate global temperatures. As it melts, the darker ocean water absorbs more heat, further accelerating the warming process. This creates a dangerous feedback loop, with potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire planet. Across the Arctic, scientists and researchers are working tirelessly to understand the impacts of climate change on polar bears and the ecosystem they depend on. Their findings are both alarming and sobering. Dr. Susan Crockford, a renowned polar bear biologist, has spent decades studying these creatures in their natural habitat. We're seeing changes in polar bear behavior and distribution that are directly linked to the loss of sea ice, she explains. Bears are having to travel further to find food, they're spending less time on the ice, and they're in poorer condition overall. Dr. Andrew Derisher, another leading polar bear expert, echoes these concerns. The evidence is clear. Climate change is the single biggest threat to the long-term survival of polar bears, he warns. If we don't take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we could lose these iconic animals from the wild within our lifetime. These are not just the dire predictions of a few concerned scientists. They are the consensus of the scientific community, based on decades of rigorous research and observation. The plight of the polar bear is a stark warning, a harbinger of the changes that are to come if we fail to address the climate crisis. These creatures, perfectly adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth, are now struggling to survive as their world melts away. Their story is a reminder that climate change is not a distant threat. It's happening now, and it's having real consequences for wildlife and people alike. The Arctic, once considered a remote and pristine wilderness, is now on the front lines of this global crisis. What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. The melting of the polar ice caps will have far-reaching impacts on sea levels, ocean currents, and weather patterns around the world. The fate of the polar bear is inextricably linked to our own. Their survival depends on our actions. The fate of the polar bear rests not on their shoulders alone, but on ours. We, as stewards of this planet, have a responsibility to protect these magnificent creatures and the fragile ecosystem they depend on. The challenge is immense, but not insurmountable. We have the knowledge, the technology, and the resources to make a difference. The first step is acknowledging the problem. Climate change is real, it's human-caused, and it's happening now. We cannot afford to ignore the overwhelming scientific evidence or the pleas of those most affected by this crisis. We must demand action from our leaders, urging them to implement policies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, promote renewable energy sources, and protect our planet's natural systems. Every individual has a role to play in addressing this global crisis. We can make choices in our daily lives that reduce our carbon footprint and contribute to a more sustainable future. Simple actions, multiplied by millions, can have a significant impact. We can choose energy-efficient appliances, reduce our reliance on cars, and support businesses that prioritize sustainability. We can educate ourselves about climate change and engage in meaningful conversations with our families, friends, and communities. We can use our voices to advocate for change, supporting organizations working to protect the Arctic and combat climate change. Every action, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. Amidst the dire warnings and the urgent calls for action, there are glimmers of hope. Renewable energy technologies are rapidly advancing, offering clean and sustainable alternatives to fossil fuels. Governments around the world are beginning to implement policies aimed at reducing emissions and transitioning to a low-carbon economy. Communities, particularly in the Arctic, are coming together to find innovative solutions to the challenges posed by climate change. Indigenous knowledge passed down through generations is proving invaluable in adapting to a changing environment. These seeds of hope remind us that it's not too late to act. By working together with urgency and determination, we can create a future where polar bears and all creatures can thrive. Imagine a future where the Arctic remains a frozen wonderland, its icy expanse teeming with life. Polar bears, strong and healthy, roam freely across the ice, their roars echoing across the frozen landscape. Seals bask on ice floes, their pups learning to navigate their icy world. The Arctic sky shimmers with the magical glow of the aurora borealis, a reminder of the beauty and wonder of this fragile ecosystem. This is the future we must strive for, a future where we have heeded the warnings, taken action, and ensured the survival of this magnificent region and its iconic inhabitants. The fate of the polar bear, and indeed the fate of our planet, lies in our hands. Let us choose wisely, act boldly, and create a future where both nature and humanity can thrive. We began our journey in a world of ice, a world sculpted by frigid temperatures and ruled by the rhythms of the freeze and thaw. We've witnessed the breathtaking beauty of this Arctic realm, its stark landscapes and resilient inhabitants. But we've also seen the undeniable signs of change, the melting ice, the struggling polar bears, the delicate balance of nature disrupted. The Arctic, once a symbol of remoteness and permanence, is now a stark reminder of our interconnected world. What happens in this far-off region has profound consequences for the entire planet, for the delicate balance of our climate, for the future of countless species, including our own. The story of the polar bear, a creature so exquisitely adapted to its icy domain, is a story that resonates deeply within us. It's a story of resilience in the face of adversity, of adaptation to a rapidly changing world. But it's also a story of vulnerability, a stark reminder that even the mightiest creatures are threatened by forces beyond their control. The future of the polar bear, like the future of the Arctic itself, hangs in the balance. The choices we make today, as individuals, as communities, and as a global society, will determine their fate. We can choose to continue on our current path, a path of unsustainable consumption and environmental degradation, a path that leads to a warmer world, a world with less ice, a world where polar bears struggle to survive. Or we can choose a different path, a path of responsibility and stewardship, a path that leads to a more sustainable future, a future where we reduce our impact on the planet, where we embrace clean energy, where we protect our natural world. The time for complacency is over. The time for action is now. Let us choose wisely, for our children, for the polar bear, for the future of our planet.